love, more joy, everything.
It's inspired young people.
Inspiration comes from within you. When you clear out the garbage that's in your mind, you then create space for something better, more beautiful to come in.
Let's have life and have it more abundantly.
I say yes.
It's like taking a workshop. I get to be in my pajamas.
We have a very active imagination, which is why it's important to learn how to harness it and then point it in the direction you want to go.
I listen to your show every day.
It's time now for Living Your Inspired Life with Susan Burrell. Susan is no-nonsense, inspirational, motivational, and fun.
This is positive talk radio.
Practical wisdom for everyday life.
It's a gift you give yourself.
Now, here's Susan.
And welcome to Living Your Inspired Life. I'm Susan Burrell, and I am welcoming everyone into this next experience of expression called 2016. Wow. Can't imagine what 2016 is going to bring. I guess we'll find out at the end of the entire year what it brought all of us. In the meantime, I invite you to go to livingyourinspiredlife.org and listen to all the good work we've done. In fact, the guest that's in the studio with me today has been on our show a couple of times, so you can go back, rewind, revisit not only what we've talked about in the past, but all the other shows. So that's livingyourinspiredlife.org. And so without much to do or ado, I want to welcome Timber Hawkeye. Thanks for coming in again.
Hi, Susan. Thanks so much for inviting me back.
Well, I'm excited because we're going to talk about your new book. And I got to say, I'm just tickled. I am tickled. I'm tickled because of the title of the book and the content of what you're going to share with us today. But also, I'm grateful that you have, I won't say it's a sequel, but that it's a follow-up or a follow-through with the first book, which is Buddhist Boot Camp, which is like on my shelf, go to all the time. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, I need something inspiring, I'm like, here, you got to get this book. Read this book.
Thank you. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call the next book, Faithfully Religionless, a sequel in any way. It's a dive deeper into some of the concepts that I discussed in Buddhist Boot Camp. Buddhist Boot Camp was a collection of short, letters and journal entries that I wrote to friends over the course of about 8 years. Whereas Faithfully Religionless reads more like a conversation that we're having right now. It's a memoir by every definition of the term, and I'm intrigued and excited to hear what people think. Yeah.
So when you say memoir, it is a conversation about the journey of your personal
Absolutely.
experience. So there's going to be a lot of personal. I mean, at Buddhist Boot Camp, you shared a lot of personal stuff, but
yes,
this is going to be even more of a.
Buddhist Boot Camp shared little tidbits, and this is, you could say it's a conversation with a good friend, or you could say it's me laying on the couch opening up to my therapist. But either way, it is very personal. It's raw, it's intimate, and it is. The intention behind it is the same as Buddhist Boot Camp. It's to awaken, enlighten, enrich, and inspire. And I've only had 3 friends proofread it for me so far. It doesn't come out till January 26th. And I only have 1 physical copy of it. And it's just been interesting to hear their feedback. A couple have actually liked it more than Buddhist Boot Camp because it's conversational, because there is that sequential storytelling tone to it, as opposed to just short little chapters.
Well, the title, Faithfully Religionless. Okay, that's a mouthful to say anyway. Faithfully Religionless. I love it. I love it because of my spiritual journey and background, and that phrase right there describes my belief system in some ways, and a multitude of people that are on the planet right now. Everybody's going, no. I'm doing the crossed finger thing. No about religion.
Yeah.
But I want to know. I want to believe that there's something more.
Exactly, and I think that the term "faithfully religionless" actually encapsulates and describes many of us, and that's what I've discovered on the book tour across the U.S. and Australia and the U.K. is that I'm not alone. We're not alone. There are many of us out there who had perhaps a negative experience with the church or the Bible or local priests or what or history or childhood or Catholic
Past
school,
lives, I don't know. Who
whatever it
knows?
is. And a lot of times they throw everything away. They want nothing to do with the church, nothing to do with religion, and they throw God away. They throw it all away, and then they're left searching. They're looking for something, and that's because they threw God away. God wasn't the problem. Religion was.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Say it again. God wasn't the problem.
Religion was.
Yeah.
And I don't think religion, I just, when I think of religion and what it calls us to believe, or how it encapsulates the idea of divinity and the whole concept of heaven and hell and being judged and everything else that religion does, it's not that God judges us, it's religion does that. And so I don't think God's the problem.
I agree with you, and I want to read something that I pulled off of the Amazon site, because this describes to me. I mean, you spoke what it is I believe.
Oh.
So this is it. You said
This is from the back of the book.
I'm not sure where it is
Okay.
from, but it was from the site. Faith is a spiritual practice of continually letting go of certainty. We're going to talk about this, by the way,
Yes.
Timber. Faith is a spiritual practice of continually letting go of certainty, of ego, of the underlying need to know, while religion is a ceremonial tradition of hanging on, clinging to concrete dogmas, stubborn rigidity, and ageless ritual. Okay, true that, man. I mean, and you describe what faith is, because so in my personal journey, it has been about letting go. And when I let go, I'm like, well, what's left? And it kind of feels like no thing, nothing. And then being okay with sitting in the uncertainty, like you said, of not knowing. And in fact, I have several clients and friends in just the last 3 months of this year that just completed, going through that. I don't know, and being so uncomfortable with it. In fact, having like an existential crisis because I don't know.
Yeah. I think the I don't know is actually the greatest place to be. It's such a relief to stop chasing your own tail, to look for answers that aren't there, and just be okay with saying, I don't know. It's what drew me to Buddhism in the first place. You ask any Buddhist, how did the world begin, or who created it, or what, and they just look at you and they say, I don't know. And that's why, Buddhism is not a religion. There isn't a creator theory or any dogma or anything like that. It's a school of thought. It's an invitation to behave a certain way, to hold certain values, and it's not a threat to other religions because it isn't a religion. So someone can be a Christian and still practice Buddhism, because Buddhism just allows us to look within and figure out, okay, what is causing the discomfort within us? And how can I control the mind that starts judging, that starts belittling, that starts doing all these things that are causing me harm? And how can I incorporate that and have Buddhism actually strengthen my faith in God, not take it away?
Well, it's interesting too, because there's so many people that are leading classes and giving talks and writing books on mindfulness. And when you say Buddhism, it's become a label in the Western part of the world, a label of a religion.
Yeah,
even though you said it's not a religion.
It's not a religion.
I totally get that.
It's sad to me almost that it's falling under that category. And as you said earlier, it's sad that the word religious or religion has almost become a bad word.
It's a bad word.
It is. It's just that. Because, and the reason I say it's sad is because there are some incredible churches out there who do really good work in the world, who are open and accepting to all, and they are embracing the true definition of what being Christ-like is all about. And so they do exist out there, but there's also the other end of the spectrum of the ones who still judge and condemn, and it's just they're giving the good ones a bad name. So what I think we're looking for is to go beyond religion and embrace what being Buddha-like or Christ-like or whoever inspires you like, or the best version of you like, without necessarily being affiliated or associated with a specific religion or even a Buddhist sect. I mean, Buddhism itself, there's over 800 different schools of Buddhism. That's so complicated. And now there are people, Buddhists, killing people in Burma.
Oh, goodness.
And so
yeah.
even Buddhism is getting a bad,
Yeah.
and it's just like, because the bad thing is the label itself. Why don't we just drop the label? And that's why I say faithfully religionless really describes when I tell people I don't have a religion, they think I don't believe in God.
Yeah.
But nothing could be further from the truth. It's just my definition of God is different than, what I grew up with, which is the bearded white guy in the sky, passing judgment. That's not how I perceive God to be. And Buddhism doesn't necessarily use the word God. It uses the word emptiness. It was while I was living at the monastery that I actually went up to one of the elder monks and I said, I love it here. I love the meditation and the chanting, but I miss talking about God. There's no mention of God. And he just looked at me and laughed. And I said, what did I say? And he's like, what do you think emptiness is? Because we talk about emptiness all the time. And he said, just substitute it for the word God. It's just the Buddhist way of saying, I don't know.
Well, and I love that. I love that idea of emptiness because, again, in my personal journey, I had to hit that place of completely what people would say is bottoming out, but really is completely emptying out. And when I was sitting in that I don't know place and really trying to allow it and invite it and even embrace the I don't know, vistas in my mind opened up in ways, and judgments dropped away more easily than in the, I finally figured it out, and here's and what was happening to me is when I would share that with people, when they would ask, so how's your journey, what's going on, because I went through a really rough 3-year divorce, right? So that's really what they wanted to know. They wanted the juicy gossip that they couldn't get somewhere else. And I said, well, I'm just I said, I don't know. And so then, of course, they wanted to help me. Oh, well, she doesn't know. So here, let me help you. Here's what I think you need to know.
Give you answers, Right.
And I'm like, no, I'm really okay with not knowing.
Yeah.
That's the best answer. I don't know.
And I think you nailed it when you said you started embracing not knowing, because that's what converts a breakdown into a breakthrough. Is when we start resisting the not knowing, when we let go of that need to know, of that need to label everything as good or bad or right or wrong or okay or not okay or healthy, just let it go, just accept it, allow it, take a step back, zoom out and look at the big picture without judging it, without looking at the shadows and going, oh, those are too dark, or looking at the light and go, oh, that's too bright. Just look at how harmoniously balanced everything is if you just step back far enough away. We can't look at anything too close up. I mean, you know how some people, we may have talked about, have those mirrors in their bathroom.
I just got one for Christmas, a magnifying mirror, and I'm like, I have to go stand on the other side of the room because it's way too close.
Nothing looks good that close up. And so if you're going to zoom in on the planet into, a bad neighborhood, and you're going to think that depicts the state of the world today, you're going to be pretty bummed out. But if you zoom out and you look at everything and how beautiful it is, it's elegantly balanced and harmoniously just sitting there in this constant flow, and we can either sit there and flow with it or we can resist it. It's totally up to us.
It's interesting because yesterday I had breakfast with some friends, and one of my girlfriends, whom I dearly love, very, very wise woman, salt of the earth, she's an herbologist, and every time we get together now, she's so concerned with the state of the world, and she's in fear again. I watch her every other week when we get together. The fear is amping up, and the fear is amping up, and she has come to believe that in some ways, and she's not religious, the end of the world is here. The end of the planet Earth, the end of everything, and
that's a label. That's something to help explain what's happening, and it has a lot to do with exposure. If all she's watching is the news, if all she's looking at is all the bad things that are happening in the world, I'm not surprised at all that that's the conclusion she's arrived at.
Right.
And it's up to us, I think, to look outside of what they show us on television or in the news, and to start looking for the highlights and the beautiful things in the world, if not be them and create those beautiful things in the world to be part of the solution rather than part of the pollution.
Okay, I agree with that. I like that idea. How? I mean, you're saying zoom out, let go, but those are things that happen.
Oh, you want
after.
actual like daily, like what to do, like turn off the TV.
Right. Right. Because, because a lot of people are like, when you can get to the place where you are okay in the I don't know, in the unknown, in the emptiness, that is mostly because
I've done certain things to get there,
and we have
and
done
you want to
it
know how
over
to
the
get
course
there.
of years.
Okay.
Other people want to snap their fingers and click their heels 3 times.
Yeah, there's no pill you can take. There's no diet you can go on. It's actually easier than that, I think. It's just a matter of taking some time to take inventory of your life and reevaluate, okay, what's causing my own suffering? What is causing me to think and be paranoid that the end of the world is coming, or that it's not safe to go to the mall, or where am I getting this information? And pull the plug, whatever it is. It could be the television, or it could be your Aunt Martha who calls you every other day when there's another gun shooting somewhere in some neighborhood. And just say, I don't want to hear that. And I'm not suggesting that we stick our head in the mud. Exactly the opposite. I'm saying that when we zoom out, we actually see more. And when we see more, then we see the beauty in the world, because it's not hidden by this veil of doom, And so on a practical level, just literally sit there and go, what is contributing to my suffering? How can I end it myself? The Buddha said, in fact, all of Buddhism can be encapsulated into pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And I love that. The pain is inevitable. The pain of growing old, the pain of watching all the destruction in the world, of all of that, that's inevitable. That's going to happen. But to have that pain cause our suffering, that's an option. That's something that we actually have control over, and we can decide not to let it penetrate us so deeply, to observe it and to bow to it as part of the balance, like we would to anything else. As I said earlier, the shadows and the light, there's no right or wrong. I had a good friend who said, the black keys on the piano are just are as important as the white ones. They both create music. It's just us who label those bad and the white one, it's just let it all, trust. And I think that's where the faith comes in. To zoom out and trust that even some of the things that we are tempted to call the most horrific things in the world have a purpose. It's not for us to then say, okay, well, what is that purpose? Let go of the need to know what the purpose is, or who's causing it, or to what end, and just allow and say, this is what's happening. Now, does that mean you don't take action? Absolutely not. You just look within and go, okay, this is happening to our food, for example. And I don't like what big corporations are doing to our food and how much chemicals are in there and whatnot. What can I do? Well, you can start with you. How can you contribute to the farmers who are still growing organic food or not spraying chemicals into what you're eating, and say, I'm going to help support them? And I think that distinction of finding something to be for rather than being out there and fighting against something. Mother Teresa said, if you invite me to an anti-war rally, I won't go. But if you invite me to a pro-peace rally, I will be there. So the invitation is the same, is to promote what you love instead of bashing what you hate.
Yeah.
So again, on a practical level, what do I do? Find out what's causing you the dis-ease within you.
Now, I have found in my experience, Timber, that takes a lot of courage to look within and go, wow, okay, that's the boogeyman that I've made up in my mind or in my heart that's scaring the bejesus out of me.
Yeah, and it could be, because sometimes it could be your family, it could be your best friend, it could be the television that you like, but you also realize that it's causing some. It's like your favorite food that you're finding out that you're actually allergic to, and that's what's causing you the stomach pain, and saying, okay, do I want the stomach pain enough? Or is it tasty? You got to make the call. If you really want, this is a brand new year, if you want to start a whole new you, there are some things you're going to need to let go of. And I describe in the book about the journey of the things that I let go of, and it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. It feels like an exchange. So
that's an interesting way to look at it, as an exchange.
It's a swap. It's an upgrade, actually, because I may let go of the deep fried chicken that I used to love so much, but what I'm getting in return is health and joy, and I'm an athlete. The same guy who failed PE in high school is now a beach volleyball player. And it's how did that happen? It happened because I was willing to let go of the fast food, of the soda, and without even knowing what kind of world is that going to open up, because I knew I wouldn't know the answer to that until I let go. Mm-hmm. And again, that's where faith comes in. I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, take the first step. You don't have to see the entire staircase, just the next step. And trust that the next one will reveal itself after that, and the next one after that.
Okay, so let's talk about faith, because that is a word that trips me up all the time. No matter how much spiritual practice I've done or exploration or excavation. And whenever I hit my resistance wall, all of my belief systems collapse. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? And what happens, it happened to me just the other day. I was setting intentions with my boyfriend. We were sitting down to set intentions for the new year. And I did not even realize there was a wall of resistance there. And I just went splat against it and got very upset. And I was like, whoa. And he's like, don't you have faith? And I'm like, no, not so much right now. I couldn't even tell you what faith meant at that point.
Interesting.
So for me, faith is a continual reevaluation and redefining. It's not like, see, when people say faith, it has always sounded to me like, the heavens open up and the angels sing and you're like, and everything's good the rest of your life, faith. And that's not really what faith is.
Well, I can't say what faith is to you. Obviously, the word triggers something for you that involves angels singing. But faith to me is not a concrete idea. It's not something you continually reevaluate or define. It's the opposite of that. It's the letting go. It's the allowing. It's the acceptance. It's what we were talking about. And the thing that allows you to do that is faith. It's the opposite of logic. I had the hardest time with the word faith as well because I'm such a logical person. Logic drove me to Buddhism, not angels singing and not monks in robes. It was just, it made sense. Mm-hmm. If I do this will hurt. If I don't want it to hurt, I need to stop doing that. And so logic led me to a point. And yet, whether you believe in science or in the Judeo-Christian Bible or whatever your belief system is, inevitably there's a big question mark that nobody knows the answer to. For me, faith is saying, I don't need to know the answer to it. I'm going to let that struggle, I'm going to let that search go and just trust that everything has worked out in my life up until this point. And I've survived everything that's happened in my life so far. I've survived all the struggles, the heartache, the divorce, right? I've survived it all. So if I was in Vegas and I was going to put money down on whether I'm going to survive what's going to happen next, I'm going to put all my chips on the fact that I will, because odds are that I will. And yet we're constantly living in fear that the next thing is going to break us, that we're going to lose our job and then we're going to lose our spouse and everything is going to go to in a handbasket. But why do we bet against ourselves?
Why do we? I mean, what is up with that? And I do it a lot. I'm raising my hand, everybody. I do it a lot.
It doesn't make any sense.
And then I'm down the struggle rabbit hole, and I turn around and I'm like, how the heck did I get down here? And why?
Yeah, why? It doesn't. And so that's what I think the beauty of mindfulness and awareness is to catch yourself when you feel that you're negative, the negative self-talk. I talk about it a lot in the book. I go deeper into what people love from Buddhist Boot Camp is the difference between feelings and emotions, being able to distinguish the disparity between truths and facts. And that's a lot of it, the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories we've heard since we were young about what is real, what isn't real, what is true, what isn't true. And realizing that the word truth has a small t, not a capital T. And that in itself is liberating. That in itself is such a letting go of dropping the shoulders down and just allowing, and if somebody tells me the sky is green, I don't need to argue with them if I think that the sky is blue. I don't need to convince them otherwise. The blueness of my sky is not at all jeopardized by how green someone else perceives it to be.
Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy. But this also, I think, speaks to the quote I read that you had written about religion as a ceremonial tradition of hanging on, clinging to concrete dogmas, stubborn rigidity.
Yeah. And endless ritual. Yeah.
Yes. So, because I think, what I think is that in all the years, the centuries of wanting to try, human beings wanting to tribe together, right? I want to make sure I fit in. I want to make sure I survive. I want to make sure I'm fed and clothed and my kids can go to college, or we're at, in all those centuries of tribing, religion has had a strong foothold because it gives everybody a to-do book. If I follow these rules, and then I'm good to go.
And it gives you community instantly.
And it gives you community.
And that's why I don't think all of religion is a problem necessarily. There are some really great benefits there, like the concept of congregation, the concept of coming together with like-minded people. That's all great. But I think even religious leaders are starting to realize they're going to need to adjust their pitch, so to speak, because telling us that we're damned to hell if we don't agree with them isn't going to work anymore. We are surrounded by so much media, as we talked about, with bombs exploding and shootings and all that stuff, that we're almost numb to the idea of eternal damnation. It doesn't scare us anymore, and I think scare tactics are not the way to go. And religious leaders are starting to realize that they need to shift from being exclusive to inclusive, or they're going to make their own concept of religion absolutely extinct.
Okay, so from your mouth to God's ears, please, because with 2016 also being an election year, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing inclusivity. I'm seeing division, divisiveness, and some of those religions are backing some of those people. Yeah, I got it. I guess I'm pointing a finger at somebody, but
which means there's three more pointing at you.
I know.
I know. Yeah. So look elsewhere. That's if you're going to focus on what's happening in politics, you're going to be pretty bummed out. And I'm not saying to ignore it. It's just take it all with a big grain of salt. Just.
Yeah, but then so here's a bigger question then, Timber. How do we then make choices individually? Okay, I mean, I'm using the politics as an analogy. It's not it's not my bugaboo. But there are people that are going, well, who am I going to vote for? And I want my vote to count. It's the same thing with in any area of life. I want what I do to have meaning. I want it to have. Maybe I want to have it. I want what now this is just me again, huh? But I want it to have a beneficial influence or a beneficial service.
The first thing to do is step out of the idea that this is quote unquote election year, that this year matters more than any other. Every moment of every day we are voting. We are voting with our wallets. We are voting with our time. We decide which businesses get to stay in business and which do not. If you're against animal cruelty and you're buying toothpaste, you can just as easily pick Colgate instead of Crest. They even cost the same, but one company tests their products on animals, one does not. So you are voting actively, and you're voting with your time. You're voting with your feet where you go. I was just on a book tour across Australia, and when Starbucks tried to take over Australia, everyone agreed not to go. And within a couple of months, all Starbucks was out of Australia. There's only a handful left. They voted with their feet. They just did not walk in there. They went somewhere else. And all the local coffee shops stayed in business. We have a lot more power than we realize. And so you said, how does the average person feel like they're in control? Like they're with their daily decisions, with the toothpaste they buy, with the hair products they buy, with the makeup and the food, and which farmers they're supporting. And it's not about... I mean, yes, it's the environment. The ripple effect is huge, but you're part of the solution. Otherwise, I hate to say it, but if you're complaining about the state of the world, but you contributing to it going downhill, you really don't have a seat in the complaining house. You really can't say anything because you're not doing anything. You're not an advocate for change. You're just whining.
Well, I agree with you.
I'm sorry.
No, there's no apology needed. Having gone through a holiday season, right? And everybody's like, oh, and I went to big box store and I went to big box store and I went to, and I was thinking about that. And I was like, well, I get that you want to go to a big box store because it's convenient, because the big box store has everything you think you might need. But like you just said, the small business people, so I have to go a few extra miles out of my way. I have to go to 4 other places in order to support these smaller businesses. Personally, that's what I'm going to do.
Absolutely.
Going to the place that, well, it's convenient because I can do all-in-one shopping.
Yeah, I help out. There's a local bookstore called Mrs. Fig's Bookworm in Camarillo, California, and I go in there to help out whenever I pass through town. And I remember a lady came in and she asked for a specific book she was looking for, and Connie had it in stock, and the lady looked at it, and as she's looking at the book, she's looking around the bookstore. She was just meeting a friend there she's never been. She's like, this is such a lovely bookstore. It's really nice. Man, like, you don't see these anymore, do you? And I said, no, they're going out of business because everyone's buying online or whatnot. And I'm not against buying things online. There's a time, place, and circumstance where doing that matters. I now live in a cabin that's an hour and a half away from the nearest grocery store and whatnot. There are certain times, places, and circumstances where it's okay. But she's looking at this book, and then she looks at Connie and she says, do you think it'll be cheaper at Costco?
Oh, honey.
And I said, why do you think these bookstores are going out of business? It's because you're choosing your own thing of saying, I want to save $2 on this book by getting it at Costco, but you're essentially putting these bookstores out of business. And as I'm doing this book tour coming up, I'm calling independent bookstores, and a lot of them are gone.
Wow.
And it's not because of election year. It's
Right.
because of election moment by moment that we are choosing to do one thing over another. Again, I'm not against Amazon or, any of the big box. I shop there myself, but time, place, and circumstance.
Right. So faithfully religionless.
Religionless. I know, it's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. Did you think about that when you were dying?
Hey, it's...
I'm teasing you.
It encapsulates...
It sure does.
Faithfully religionless.
So why don't you share with us a couple of stories as you were... Because it is a memoir.
It is a
Timber.
memoir. It starts out literally with me moving to the United States as a teenager, first year high school. And I'm sitting in the kitchen at our house in San Francisco. And my parents and my sister are out of the house, and I'm sitting there reading a book, and I noticed the neighbors across the street left, and they came back a couple of hours later with a dead tree tied to the roof of their car. And this was really strange for me, and I'm sitting there watching, and they take this tree, and it's not dead like brown and dying. It was lush and full, and they take it off the car, and they don't carry it to the backyard where I expected a 5-foot tree to go. They carry it up the stairs and put it in the middle of the living room. They open the curtains for the world to see. And I'm sitting there going, what in the world is going on? I had just moved from Israel 5 months prior to this. I had never heard of Christmas before. And I mean, they're sitting there, they're decorating it, they're putting lights on it. They put what I thought was a Barbie doll on the top. and so this really is where the journey began, is out of curiosity. Is I wanted to know what is going on, because then the neighbors brought a tree over and all. And I'm like, is this some kind of joke? What's happening? And I got curious. I started asking people about what they believe and why they believe what they do. And this curiosity to better understand people and why they believe what they do, where those came from, helped me look within and go, what do I believe? And why? Where did I pick that idea up? And is it worth hanging on to? So it's a constant reevaluating. And like I said, even when you meet people who don't believe what you do, who believe the sky is green, you just look at that experience as an enriching experience of like, oh, I can walk away from that knowing that now, to some people, the sky looks green. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. Not wrong, just interesting. Mm-hmm. So it really is just my own journey, and then wanting to be the all-American kid and whatever that meant, and doing everything I could to get there. I remember, actually, this didn't make it into the book, but it's I remember when I took my citizenship test a few years later, they wanted, they ask you all these questions. And I said, well, can't they just look at my credit report? Because I'm in debt, and then you don't get more American than that. But it was just this hunger to, of course, initially fit in. I did everything I thought I should do, quote unquote. And I got a job in corporate America. And then I realized I'm doing all of this because I think it'll lead to me being happy. But if I take a step back and I look at everyone around me who has the corporate job, who has the house, who has the sports car, who has the picket fence, the 2-car garage, are they happy? No. Well, then why? If this was a recipe to happiness, if this was a recipe I would follow in the kitchen, but I have no proof that it's ever going to work out. In fact, I have a lot of proof that it doesn't work out. Why am I following it? Why don't I just take a step back, let go of everything I ever thought was true, and reevaluate? And then it gave me insight to what I want to do with my life. And it didn't involve sitting under fluorescent lights for 40 to 60 or 80 hours a week.
Right.
So I left. And yes, a lot of people thought I was crazy. A lot of people still think I'm crazy. But I'm leading the life I want to lead. And that's the beauty of it, is when I meet someone who is working in an office and they love their job, we're not in disagreement. They're doing what they love. I'm doing what I love. And everybody's happy. Some people do find their bliss by working 80 hours a week. They thrive on that. And I think that's fantastic. Keep doing it until it no longer works. And that's the beauty of that constant reevaluation, is this worked a year ago, but it may not work today.
Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. I want to tap on a little bit more, because I have a couple of friends who are pursuing their dream, right? And it's taking a very, very, very long time, like years. And they keep pursuing, and yet there's not a lot of happiness and joy in the pursuit. There's exciting days where, wow, this is really amazing. But so like, when do you know you're actually on the dead end road?
I think it's the mistake here is the concept of the pursuit of happiness. Because what that does is it puts happiness at a distant spot in the future. That means we won't be happy until we get there. Whereas what makes me happy is the journey. I don't know where I'm going. Honestly, Susan, can't tell you where I'm going to live 5 months from now. I don't know, not even what country. And to some people, that's really scary. To me, that's exciting. Everything I own fits in a backpack. So that's not a problem. I'll go anywhere. I'm not attached to anything. I've let go of a lot, and I embrace the unknown. And so there's beauty in letting go. I don't think happiness is something we have to pursue. It's something we have to embrace. It's right here, right now. And if your friends are focused on a goal, they're essentially saying, I won't be happy until ... whatever that is, until I get the house, until I get the sports car, until that. And they are the reason they're not happy. They took happiness and they essentially made it impossible for them to have right here, right now. And I think the antidote to that is gratitude. Just practicing constant, daily, moment-by-moment gratitude for what we have, rather than focusing on what we don't. That's, again, why I love Buddhism so much. It's just a practice of controlling the mind. So when we find ourselves miserable, we ask ourselves, why am I miserable? What am I focusing on? What I don't have? Maybe that's the problem. Am I feeling like I'm not happy because happiness is defined by me having a house this big, or this many kids, or this much money? Like, then maybe my definition of happiness is the problem here. Not, I don't need to pop a pill to fix that. Having said that, I'm not in any way suggesting that depression isn't a real thing. Depression is an actual chemical imbalance that can help with both meditation and medication. I'm talking about the day to day, like your friends who are pursuing happiness.
Well, this is like it's like following the American dream, the old, I'm saying old idea of the American dream, because it's
old to you, but to some people it's still very real. The big screen TV, all of that.
Oh my gosh. And then, so it's interesting because as you were speaking, Timber, there is a place where the pursuit of. It's not even pursuit of happiness. This is the idea.
Pursuit of a goal, pursuit of
Right.
a dream.
And so so I guess I'm asking you, so when do you what's the marker that says, all right, enough of that?
When it's not, I mean, it's just, how's that
Because
working
a lot of
for
people
you? Yeah.
don't even realize they're not happy. They're paying their bills.
It's to ask, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why?
And that takes being consciously awake and aware.
Well, I don't know. I think it just takes someone or yourself asking yourself that question. You know, I struggled for a long time, and I talk about it a lot in the book about sexual responsibility. And it wasn't until I asked myself, why am I having as much sex as I'm having? And that was a really scary question for me to be honest with myself about, because it was never because of the other person. It was because of my own insecurities. It's because I wanted to feel loved, and I associated being attracted to enough to be slept with as being loved and attracted. But none of that meant anything. Actually, the more I slept around, the worse I felt. And so it took me asking myself, why am I doing what I'm doing? And the same question is, why am I showing up at work every day? And I'm doing it because I need to pay off my debt. Okay, well, that makes sense. How much longer do I need to do that in order to, okay, I've got 6 more months. All right. Then you can just kind of see this has a reason, this has a reason. Now, when people tell me, well, I can't quit my job because I have to pay for my cell phone and I have to pay for the car and I have to pay for the car insurance, I have to pay the mortgage. And I'm like, well, you don't have to. Those are all choices. So ask yourself again, do I really need that big house? Do I really need that third car? And then go, why do I have that third car? Well, because I'm competing with my brother who has 5. You know, and so ask yourself those questions and go, what's really important to you? Working 80 hours a week because you want to save face when you're hanging out with people who judge you? Or do you just want to be happy? And it's really just an invitation for all of us to be honest with ourselves. And I know that may sound hard, but what I'm suggesting is definitely easier than living the rest of your life chasing your own tail.
Right. And I guess until we let go of a few things, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And we don't know that not knowing is the better.
And that's why time, place, and circumstance. What was true a year ago is not true today. And so we can't do today what we did a year ago. And we can't get so attached to what we're doing today and say, this is the way. You know, I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, is if I eat this every day and I do this every day, then I'm going to be happy. And I said, yeah, perhaps for a while. But when it stops working, don't be too scared to reevaluate and change a few things. Just let go of any idea that you're absolutely right about anything.
Oh, my goodness. And that's hard for people.
It's not what I'm suggesting. I know people say it's easier said than done, but what's the alternative? To be miserable for the rest of your life? That's terrible.
For some people, Timber, it is. I mean, I have a client who's going through this existential breakdown, if you will, and completely scared out of her mind. Yeah. And she said, but I just don't know. And I said, that is the best place. But when you're in those...
You can't tell somebody that. They have to get there themselves.
But when you're in that crisis, when individuals have spent a majority of their lives achieving, accumulating, acquiring, all of that, then to get to a place where I'm going to let it all go.
Yeah, it takes time, it takes practice, and that's why I talk about the practice of letting go as a gradual thing. We let go of physical things, and you know, it may not sound like that has anything to do with this spiritual awakening, but the way we do one thing is the way we do all things. And so if we get into the habit of letting go of stuff that we have that we're not using anymore, then we're opening the door to our mind being able to let go of old opinions that no longer hold true, of old judgments, of old beliefs that we don't need anymore. Just because essentially, otherwise we're hoarders of bad habits.
Right, exactly. That's exactly,
And one of the worst habits that we're in is identifying who we are with what's happening right now. And so even saying what you said earlier about your friend being in a crisis, well, that's a label. It's like you said earlier, your breakdown, well, that was actually your breakthrough. Now, if you look at it as a breakdown and you identify yourself as someone who's going through a really hard time, you're going to have a really hard time. But if you don't label it and you just say, this is interesting, There's a story I share in the book about the time I fell off a cliff in Hawaii and I had a near drowning incident, which was incredible because I never labeled it as a bad thing. I was like, well, this is interesting. I can't breathe. I've never been in this situation before. And I just had this really interesting internal narrative of what's happening. And I was like, oh, I just broke my leg. Let's see what that's like. And wait, I might die. Well, that's interesting. I've never done that before. And there was this really beautiful way of manifesting what I've been doing in sitting meditation for 12, 15 years, actually materializing in that moment. Because meditation isn't going to show its benefits in those 20 minutes that you're taking a time out to sit. It's going to show its benefits 5, 10 years down the road. And that's when it showed it for me, taking a time out to say, I'm just going to sit here and for the next 10 minutes, and it doesn't matter what's going on, if I have to scratch the back of my head or if my foot falls asleep, I'm just not going to do any of that. I'm just, for the next 10 minutes, I'm not going to move. If that's your entire meditation, you're just saying that, and then you're going to feel, your mind is going to play every trick in the world on you because it doesn't like not being in control. It wants to decide for you what to think about, what to not think about, and But when you gain control over it and say, yes, I know you want me to scratch the back of my head and you're with this pretend spider that's crawling on me, and you say, I'm not going to because I made a commitment, then you're exercising a muscle that's going to prove useful throughout the day. When someone at work says something annoying, you can just choose not to be annoyed. The benefits are throughout the entire, we can be in a stressful situation and choose not to be stressed. And as I talk a lot in the book about growing up in Israel, surrounded by terrorists and terrorism, but we chose not to be terrorized. So again, we can't point our fingers at the outside world and say, there's the problem, because what's going on outside of us doesn't have the power to disturb our inner peace if we don't let it. And nobody outside of us can affect that. Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And I believe no one can make you feel anything without your consent.
Yeah, I hear that. I agree with you.
But it's hard because we're so conditioned to say, you make me feel ...
Yeah.
Catch yourself. Next time you say that, catch yourself and have my voice in your head going, Susan, your boyfriend's not making you feel anything that you don't already feel and have insecurities about. He's helping you. He's your greatest teacher to go, oh, this is what I have to work on. Great.
And that's true in any situation.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter who you're facing, because and we've talked about, you and I have talked about this over the years, but it is all about what do I need to know about me so that I can live my best life ever. And that phrase to me means so that I can be happy.
And living your best life ever and whatnot, it's important that we distinguish and clarify that that's not the pursuit of happiness, that's not a goal. Happiness, Gandhi said, when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in alignment, that's happiness. That's how you find your bliss. And the reason we have so much internal conflict is because we think, believe, say, and do very, very different things. Again, using those little examples from earlier, we may say that we're against animal cruelty, but we're shopping at a store for a product that is tested. We have leather seats in our cars because we like the way it looks, but it's in direct contradiction to what we believe. And when we create that dichotomy, we're creating our own suffering.
So what I'm hearing you talk about right now is being in integrity with ourselves.
Living in line with our values, absolutely. And the first step to doing that is figuring out what are our values. Take out a piece of paper. Write down what your core values are. Describe in a paragraph the kind of person you want to be. And then cross-reference it with the person you are and say, where do I have some work to do? If I want to lead a positive life, but my best friend is this really negative person, then maybe I need to let go of that friend, just bow out of it and say, I need to live my truth. And it's possible to do that, or to set boundaries. Boundaries are very healthy. I didn't like gossiping and I didn't like hearing about other people, but every time I called my mother, it was always like he, she, or they, and talking about the weather. And I'm like, okay, I love you, Mom, and I love talking to you, but we need to set some ground rules. No more talks about he, she, or they. Don't talk about other people, and don't mention the weather. There was a long moment of silence after that.
I bet.
But then it blossomed into a relationship where we talked about what she thinks happens to us after we die. She told me stories from her childhood, things I found out that I would have never known had I not set those boundaries. We think of boundaries as a way to end things, but I think it's really a way to redirect them into a healthier existence.
Oh, I love that. I love what you just said, because I think a lot of people do think if I'm setting a boundary, that means this thing is over.
Absolutely not.
I'm
Think
drawing
of them,
a line in the sand.
No, think of them as the bumpers on bowling lanes, that kids have. You set those boundaries. That means you're directing, you're increasing the chances of the ball going where you actually want it to go instead of into the gutter.
Yeah.
Boundaries are healthy. So figure out, why do you keep going in the gutter? What's happening? And redirect your life towards the kind of life you want to lead. Write it down. Describe it. Describe the person you want to be, especially it's a new year. I don't ask people what their new year resolutions are. I ask them, what are your new you resolution? Redefine who you are. Re-examine your behavior in the world and live in line with your core values.
And live in line with your core values. And how wonderful and glorious is it that we can do that whenever we want? We don't have to wait for it to be a new year.
No, we don't. And we can start right now. We can start tomorrow. We can, it's one thing at a time. The food you buy, the clothes you buy, the stores where you buy your books. Just, when you feel the urge to go and just go online because it's convenient, say, you know what, I can go out of my way. And you'll be surprised of how enriching the experience can be. Meeting people at the bookstore, holding the book in your hand, finding out, as it happened because I've been helping out at the bookstore, someone comes in to buy the book and they look at the book, they look at me behind the register and they go, wait a minute, what's happening here? They'd never expected the author to be there, And so magical things happen when you live in line with your values. I'm not telling you this because it's written down somewhere. I'm telling you this because this has been my experience. Mm-hmm. And I don't need you to believe me. Just try it for yourself. And you'll find for yourself that magic does happen when you live in line with what you say and when you think what you say and what you do are all in alignment.
It's interesting. The last few days, there's been some beautiful sunsets, and I had the opportunity to go out to the ocean and witness a couple of them, and so many people standing out there watching the colors change and the clouds move, and there was a place where people wanted, everybody's looking at each other and smiling and connecting, not speaking a word, but participating in a community of witnessing beauty. And
that's a bunch of people going to church witnessing God.
Yeah.
Right there on the beach, and they're all faithfully religionless, and I think we can come together for various reasons under different circumstances, and we will find community everywhere we go. Absolutely.
So Timber Hawkeye, tell me what's up besides the book tour. Where are you going on the book tour?
I'm on my way right now to record the audiobook edition of the book. The book comes out January 26th, and I will swing by Camarillo again on my way back down sometime around March. I will have an event here in town, not sure where yet. So stay posted. I will include all the information on my website, timberhawkeye.com. And get the book. If you like it, please don't keep it on a shelf. Give it to someone else. Let them read it. Pass it around.
I got to tell everybody that I got chills, as you said, just pass it around, because that was the first book, Buddhist Boot Camp. I think I bought 20 of them and gave them away and told people, when you're done reading it,
give it away. Just keep giving it away. Just let it pass around. And I think that it's the greatest gift we can give someone is an experience that they wouldn't otherwise have. And then don't keep it for yourself. Let it go. Let it all go. Just keep passing it on. In fact, I can think of several people that I guess I'm getting this book for to send to them. Faithfully Religionless by Timber Hawkeye. So when you come back around in Camarillo, you can let me know, and we'll pop the event here on Living Your Inspired Life. Thank you, Susan.
So thank you so much, and again, thank you so much for all the amazing work that you do all over the world. In the last few years, how many different countries have you gone to?
I did a book tour across the U.S., the UK, and Australia, and the book itself.
That was for Buddhist Boot Camp.
That was for Buddhist Boot Camp, and we raised enough money to print paperback editions of it to distribute to correctional facilities across the globe. thousands of free copies of the book are given to inmates who get free yoga and meditation classes.
Oh my
And
gosh, I didn't
it's-
realize that part.
Oh man, it's been an incredible journey. And then, some schools have made Buddhist Boot Camp part of their required reading curriculum. And so I go around talking to inmates and students about the benefits of living in gratitude and mindfulness. It's just been an incredible journey. And I know that Faithfully Religionless is a memoir, and it's going to be different than Buddhist Boot Camp. But I also think it'll resonate with perhaps an even broader audience, because there are so many of us out there who are seeking some kind of connection with divinity, some kind of embrace of the big question mark, but not wanting to call it a religion and not wanting to associate or affiliate ourselves with a lot of the wars that have happened in the name of religion or whatnot.
Or God, yeah.
Or God. And when I use the word God again, if it makes people uncomfortable, use the universe, Mother Nature, Father Time.
The
or
unknown.
The unknown. Or as my friend sends all his prayers out to Dear Bob.
Dear Bob. Timber Hawkeye, thank you so much for joining me again. And we'll be talking to you hopefully sometime in March, even if it's a brief hello. So I'm just going to end with, and so it is, namaste.
Namaste.